Okay, this video I'm going to give you a piece of ordnance from history, and I will be telling you how to install and remove this piece of ordnance. We are going to be covering the United States U.S. M16 bounding fragmentation anti-personnel mine, also known as the Bouncing Betty. These mines reportedly are copies of the German S-mine from World War II. We captured some blueprints, brought them back to the United States, interpreted them, and improved them slightly. If you look at them side by side, they are pretty close, difference being the fuse. Now, this mine reportedly entered production in 1953. The last ones came off the production line in 1974. According to a report to Congress in 2002, there are around 465,000 M16 series mines in the inventory, with a large percentage of them forward deployed in South Korea in bunkers there waiting to be used in case of war. According to U.S. doctrine and international agreements, there is only 2 locations these mines can be used: South Korea and Guantanamo Bay. Guantanamo Bay, we will not be putting any more or any new ones in the ground. South Korea is the only location U.S. troops are authorized to put these mines in the ground. But if the United States, the continental U.S., was ever invaded or a civil war occurs, you can guarantee these things will be coming out of the bunkers here in the United States, and they will be getting used. Now, some technical data on these. They are 4 inches in diameter. They are 7 5/8 inches in height from the base of the mine to the top of the pressure prongs when the fuse is installed. Total weight of the mine is 7 7/8 pounds. The explosive content inside is TNT, with approximately 1 pound of TNT inside the mine. Now, when I was trained on these, long after '74, we were told there is only 2 series of M16s in the inventory. When you look it up now, it says there is 3. You have the M16, M16A1, M16A2. The difference between the series is the location of the fuse well. When I went through my training as a combat engineer, I was told the M16, the fuse well is in the center. The M16A1, the fuse well is off-center just a little bit. It's closer to the edge. When you look up the information on the series of mines now, it says the M16, M16A1, the fuse is in the center, and the M16A2 is the fuse that is off-center. Why this other series appeared out of nowhere, I have no idea. But we'll just run with it. There is differences with the individual constructions of the mines between the series, which does come into play when you're emplacing the mine, and I will discuss those differences later. Now, these mines are designed to detonate once they're tripped, detonate at a height of approximately 1.8 meters above the ground. So they are designed to detonate at chest to shoulder height. This is to kill the target. This is different than the bounding fragmentation mines used by other countries, most noticeably the series used by the Russians, the OZM series, which are designed to detonate at 1 meter in height. They're designed to go off at waist height to seriously mess up your day and to stop you from ever assisting in the production of new soldiers in the future. Kill radius for the M16 series mines is around 27 meters. They state that the M16A2, the kill radius is 30 meters because there's a little bit extra TNT in the M16A2 supposedly. The danger radius or injury casualty producing radius of an M16 series mine is out to 183 meters. Does that mean the person at 100 meters or 183 meters is going to get seriously messed up when one of these goes off? No. They just have a small chance that they could catch a small piece of shrapnel. But if you're within 25 meters of one of these mines going off, well, your buddies are going to be measuring you to put you inside a box and put you inside the ground, if they can find enough pieces to fill that box with. These things are very devastating. They were a high priority item for the Viet Cong to steal back during the Vietnam War, and then they would employ them against us. They actually liked our M16s more than the OZM series mines supplied to them by the Soviets. Now we're going to go into what you need to emplace the mine. You need, obviously, the mine itself, which is a big can, has a plastic shipping plug on top. An M605 fuse. You also need a spool of tripwire and the M25 arming wrench. You also need 2 stakes, or at least 2 anchoring points, when you are putting this mine in the tripwire activation mode. This mine is not designed to be surface laid, it must be buried. Now, steps for installation. First, you need to inspect the mine itself. Look for cracks, dents, and damage to the exterior of the mine that could interfere with its operation. You also need to remove the shipping plug. To do that, you need that end of the M25 arming wrench. Remove the shipping plug, look inside the fuse well. It goes all the way to the bottom of the can, or damn near. Make sure there is no debris inside that will interfere with the fuse. If there is debris, you take the mine, flip it over so that the top is facing down, gently tap the bottom of the mine, which is now facing up, to try to expel the debris out, to get it to fall out. If it will not fall out, you cannot use the M605 fuse. It can be detonated with other methods, which I'm not going to cover inside this video. I'm just going to cover emplacement with the 605 fuse. Next, you're going to inspect your M605 fuse. You need to check to make sure that all 4 pins are present. You have a pin here on the front. There's a locking pin, interlocking pin, and a positive pin. Make sure that they are present. Make sure that these 3 can move freely. Do not try to move that pin on the front that looks like a cotter pin. They call it the release pin. If that pin is ever removed, that fuse detonates. So don't screw with it. Don't try pulling that cotter pin looking thing off the front of the fuse. Bad things happen. But check the other fuses. On the back side of the fuse, directly across from the release pin, you have the locking pin, the interlocking pin, which goes from the locking pin up to the positive safety pin, which is up on the top here. Make sure that all those move freely. Now, the positive safety pin, that thing is stepped, almost like this, almost like the mine probe. Both ends of the pin are thicker with a thinner shaft in the center. Now, if there's any problems, when you're checking that positive safety pin, you're trying to see if it'll slide out freely. If you get to the end and you can't pull it, that thicker part of the pin through there, that means that fuse has been tripped. You cannot use it. You need to make sure that the positive safety pin will pull all the way through the striker shaft, which is here in the center. Just pull it out, see if it'll move freely, put it right back in, then put your other 2 pins on to continue from there. Now after you check the pins, you have to check down here. There's a rubber gasket right at the top of these threads, right at the bottom of this little plate. Make sure that that gasket is not messed up. If it is messed up, you're going to have to use some type of silicone grease to waterproof this fuse when you put it in the ground. Otherwise, water will get in there and it will mess up the booster at the bottom of the fuse well. Now, there are a couple notes on the fuse which I have to cover now. First off, there is a safety message that is in the latest changes to FM 20-32 mine countermine operations. That safety message says, do not use any fuses that were manufactured before 1957. So when you're looking at the container the fuse is in, if it says on there package date 1953 to 1956, do not use that fuse. It is considered not safe. Exact reason why, I don't know, doesn't say in there. Now another note, which this is from experience, told to me by another engineer back in the 90s when we were training with live M16s. His unit were given a couple crates of M16s. One of them was M16s, the other M16A1s. They went to the range to do their yearly qualifications. When they opened up the crates, well, all the fuses are the same. They're M605 fuses, so they mixed them together inside a crate or inside a box. When everyone came up to draw their mines to do their installation and removals, they just grabbed one of the fuses from the box. They found out they may be the same series of fuse, they may all be M605s, but they're all slightly different. The fuse that goes to the M16 will not fit inside an M16A1. Fuse that's in the M16A1 will not fit the M16. And we can probably guess that the fuse for the M16A2 will not fit inside the A1 or the M16. There's a little bit difference in the height where they won't sit in the mine correctly. Plus, the threading is different. Why they did that, I don't know. So you have to use the fuse that came with that mine. Don't interchange them between the series. Now we've gone through, we've done the inspection. We're going to get ready to put this into position in a minefield or for an ambush. So we're up on our ambush site or where we're going to be putting the mines in. We're back at the mine dump. We've inspected them all. They all passed. Go through. Now we fuse the mine. Use that end of the arming wrench to remove the shipping plug. Slide in the fuse. Use that end of the wrench to tighten it in. Snug it up. This top part of the fuse does spin. You have a little notch here on each side. This plate, that's what your wrench will go on. That's what will turn into the mine, tightening it up. The mine's fused, ready to go. All the pins are still in place. Dig the hole for the mine. Now we're going to have two slight variations here. I'm going to cover them both. Make sure that your hole is just wide enough for your mine to go in and the bottom is level. You can booby trap the mines. That's another thing I'm not going to cover in this video. If you are going to put this in for tripwire mode, your hole should be deep enough that the level of the ground is right here, right at the base of the head of the fuse. If you are putting this in for pressure mode, the top of the ground needs to come to here, the very top of the 605 fuse. Clear as mud? It actually makes sense. When you're putting it in tripwire, you have to be able to attach a tripwire to the release pin here. If we're putting this in pressure mode, we're not going to be employing the release pin. That release pin stays in there. When we're putting it into pressure, we're setting it off using the 3 pressure prongs that are up top. So we dig our hole to the correct depth, put the mine inside the hole. We then pack the dirt around the casing of the mine to hold it in place. That doesn't mean you're going to take a tool and you're going to tamp the hell out of it. Just press the dirt in with your fingers so it has a nice stable base. Next, you're going to go through and arm the mine. And it's going to depend on how this mine's going to be put in. Now, first off, if we're putting this in tripwire mode, we had the mine in the ground. We did not cover it up. You know, we need to know the mine's there. We put in 2 stakes or tie it off to 2 anchors on either end. Could be a vehicle, you know, a knocked out vehicle, could be a tree, whatever's out there, could be a damn fence post. That anchor point can be up to 10 meters away from the mine. Doctrinally, you put the mine in, you put your tripwires in as a V. That's if you're putting this in a standard minefield. So 45 degrees from the center on each side, going out 10 meters, is where you put your stakes. Tie your tripwire off to the anchor, run it back to the mine. Go to the other, and then leave one end there. It helps to put something on top of it, like a rock or a tool, to show you, hey, that's where the end of it is. Go to the other stake, attach a tripwire, run it back. When you get the second one back there, you then attach it. When you get the tripwire back, you tie it off to the release pin here, that cotter pin. You tie it off on the ring. Do not pull out that ring when you're attaching the tripwire. Bad things happen. Don't forget that. So we'll go back here, camera guy. Now the reason we do this as a 45 degree angle, and that's towards the enemy. The mine is towards the friendly side. If the enemy's coming down, they hit one of the branches on this tripwire, they'll take the slack out of it. It's going to bow away from the stake and the mine going in whatever direction, and that will pop the release pin off of the fuse set off the mine. That's why you do that. Now, if we're doing this for pressure mode, as I said, we go to this level, the very top of the 605 fuse. I'm going to have to show you the diagram here to show you the fuse, the safety pins for this point on. Now, when you're ready to remove the pins, there's an acronym that we were taught, and that is LIP. Locking, interlocking, then positive. Regardless of the mode that you are in, whether it's pressure or tripwire. First pin you're going to pull is that little cotter pin that's on the back side of the fuse. Pull straight out. Then the interlocking pin here will slide down and out of the end of the positive safety pin. You then remove the positive safety pin. The mine is now armed. At that point, this mine can be set off with either pressure on the prongs or can be set off by the removal of the release pin. Some of the technical on that: for pressure, it takes 8 to 20 pounds of pressure on the pins. For tripwire, it takes 3 to 10 pounds of pressure on the tripwire to pull out the release pin. Now if you're putting this mine in to, let's go back up here now, camera guy. Let me know when we're good to go. If you're putting this in tripwire mode, you got the tripwire on there, all 3 pins are removed. At that point you go through, camouflage the mine. Just put a little bit of vegetation around it so that no one will see the fuses there. And whatever camouflage you put around the fuse here for hiding it, make sure none of that camouflage will interfere in the operation of the tripwire and especially that release pin. If you're putting it into pressure mode, after you remove the locking and interlocking pin, you fill in dirt around up to the top of the 605 fuse. You only have the positive pin left. Remember, we're in pressure mode for this. So we put the dirt in there. You don't need to pack it down. I wouldn't recommend it. Just get it in there, camouflaging the fuse. The only things that you should see above the ground, and you should barely see them, is the pressure prongs and the striker there in the center. After you get the dirt in, it's camouflaged, you remove the positive safety pin and then camouflage the mine itself, put in some grass, a little bit of leaves, something like that, so that no one will see the pressure prongs. Now for removing the mine. When you come up on the mine, first thing you do is check for obvious signs of tampering. You're looking for footprints around the mine. You're looking for what looks like, you know, it's been dug away a little bit and someone put the dirt back. Then carefully remove the camouflage. Then install the positive safety pin in the striker. It should go through easily. If it doesn't, you got a problem. If you cannot get the thicker end of that pin to go into the striker, that means the striker has fallen, the mine has started to activate for some reason. If that is the case, notify your supervisor and that mine will have to be destroyed in place. It is a misfire. But if everything's going good, you slide that positive safety pin all the way through the striker inside the hole, and you've then safed the mine. If you're in pressure mode, at this point you will clear away the soil from around the fuse, being very careful not to remove the release pin from the front of the fuse. Clear it away as best as possible. Then you will put in the interlocking pin into the positive pin, and then put the locking pin through its notch on the back side of the fuse, safing the mine. If you're coming in removing this from tripwire mode, you'll come in, do the same thing. You'll check the ground, make sure there's no obvious signs of tampering, remove the camouflage, exposing the mine fuse, put in the positive safety pin, then put in the interlocking and the locking right away because the fuse body is above ground. If it's been in place for tripwire, after you got the pins in, you will then go down each length of the tripwire to each stake or each anchor point, check the ends, make sure it has not been booby trapped at the end, that someone has not put some type of pressure release device or some type of pull device at the end. If it's clear, nothing's been messed with on the tripwires, come back to the mine, cut both strands of tripwire that is connected to the release pin. Now, after the fuse is safed, either pressure or trip, the fuse is safe, the fuse is neutralized essentially. We go through and we check the sides of the mine and underneath for anti-handling devices. You dig down one side first, keeping the other side still packed in. You'll hold it like this with the fuse in the center of your hand between your thumb and your finger. Check down the side, make sure to check underneath. You need to make sure you check past the halfway point to the bottom of the mine. Make sure there's no pressure release devices underneath like an M5 mousetrap. Check the one side, backfill the dirt, check the other side. If it's clear, well then you'll dig out a little bit of dirt from the other side here. You'll remove the mine from the hole, set it beside the hole. You will then remove the fuse using that end of the arming wrench, putting it in there, unscrewing it. You will then reinstall the shipping plug in the mine. Then you turn in the mine and the fuse for later use. Just like with anti-tank mines, there is only a certain number of times you can emplace these mines and remove them for safety purposes. Clear as mud, everyone understand them? There you go, that's install and remove the M16 series of anti-personnel mines. Now, for all my engineer brothers and the Patriot militia movements, always remember essayons.